On today's show, the Hawks are no longer unbeaten in NBA Cup action as they lose to the Chicago Bulls on this Friday evening. We'll break down how it transpired, where they struggled, and by the way, once again, it was in the shooting components of the game on offense and defense. Where to go from here and much more. All that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1852 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Friday evening into Saturday here in late November. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at Robinhood Gold. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. I also want to encourage you at the top of the podcast, as I always do, to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Please check us out across the board when it comes to podcasts. We're on Apple. We're on Spotify. We're on Overcast. We're also on YouTube. If you want to watch this podcast in video form, please like the video as you are watching it and subscribe on audio and video to support the podcast. And we'll dive in today, for the most part, to what became a 136-122 loss for the Hawks in Chicago at the end of a long 4-game road trip that started on the West Coast. This is their third loss in the last 4 games, 1-3 on the trip, and now 0-2 against Chicago this season. And randomly, the last 13 months or so, the Hawks are now 1-5 against the Bulls. They've had their number throughout the last year plus, and that was the case in this game. The Hawks were like a coin flip or so in the betting market across the board before this game started. A tough spot to be sure on the last game of a long trip, but still a very, very winnable game, and the Hawks just couldn't win it in this spot. They were down 7 at halftime. They played scrappily at times in the first half. Couldn't make a shot before halftime. That flipped in the second half, actually became a much more offensive half after the break. The Bulls shot it incredibly well in this one, as we'll talk about more later on. They scored 78 points in the second half to kind of ensure the Hawks could not come back in this game. And they fell to 7-10 overall. And later on, I'll talk about how the game flowed and also my player-by-player evaluations in this game. But first, I want to lead with some big-picture stuff and the takeaways from this game. I sort of alluded to it already, but it was truly kind of a tale of two halves in this game for how things flowed. In the first half, it was really about a total lack of shot-making for Atlanta, reminiscent of what happened on Wednesday. If you either watch that game or listen to the podcast after that game, that was essentially the story of the Warriors game in total, because the Hawks just could not make a shot. In the second half of this game tonight against Chicago, the Hawks didn't make jumpers, but that's because apparently they just can't make jumpers anymore. But they did have 17 assists after halftime. They scored 71 points after halftime, but at the same time, the Bulls' pace took its toll offensively. They shot the heck out of the ball. 85% true shooting for the Bulls after halftime. And that was obviously a blitzkrieg down the stretch. So I want to focus on the offense for the Hawks first in this game, because I think it was the bigger issue from an overall standpoint process-wise. But it was definitely some two-way issues along the way. They ended up with about a 112 offensive rating in this game, did Atlanta. That is not horrendous on its own, but it's below average, and it was definitely juiced by the end of game kind of scramble. The Hawks had 38 points in the fourth quarter when it was basically up and down, up and down, up and down the stretch. But listen, I have to go with my stat of the night, and that's happening right now. The Hawks ended this game losing by 14 points, right? They actually had 20 more shooting possessions than the Bulls did in this game. They took 21 shots more from the field and only 2 less free throws. And I'll just say this, broadly speaking, I did some research on this. It's also very logical. It is exceptionally difficult to lose at all, but especially by 14 points when you take that many more shots than your opponent in an NBA game. Because in theory, the skill level should be pretty close. They're all pros. In a college game, sure. Big skill gaps, etc. In a NBA game, if you take 20 more possessions from the field or shooting possessions than your opponent, you should not be losing by 14 points. And that basically means that either or both of you don't make a shot, the opponent makes every shot, or both. And it kind of happened in both respects in this one. The biggest issue for the Hawks offensively is still their jump shooting, and it has been really for a large portion of the last couple of weeks. I would say they were 10 of 34 from 3 in this game. That is not like all-time bad, but 29% is quite bad. They're now 22 of 79 in the last 2 games. That's like 27-ish% from 3 in that sample size. They've only cracked 35%, which is even below average, basically, once in the last 7 games. So the last 7 games, the Hawks just cannot make a 3. And they got 4 of 8 from Bogey, who actually looked like himself tonight. That's an encouraging thing after he looked quite bad on Wednesday, but the rest of the team was 6 of 26. 6 of 26 from three for the rest of the team. And that's including 2 of 4 from Dyson Daniels, who was actually in fact, not even probably, had his worst game as a Hawk tonight. And just a lot of noise there. So it was not only threes, though. I will say that. I lead with that on purpose, but the Hawks took 65 shots in the paint, according to the tracking in this game. That is a ton. That's a really good sign for your offense. But they only made 35 of them. So they missed 30 shots in the paint. That's very bad percentage-wise on shots in the paint. And that helped also to fuel a lot of fast break stuff for the Bulls, which Quinn talked about after the game. I think he's right about that after watching the film. And look, they did a lot of things well on offense. Like, you don't get to be able to take that many more shots to your opponent if you're not winning some other stuff. So they had 11 turnovers in this game. That's really good, including only 2 in the second half. Excellent figure there. They had 19 second chance points. That's a really good number. They won the glass by a lot. They had 32 assists. But when you shoot 12 of 40, yes, 12 of 40 outside of 14 feet, so all long twos and threes, 12 of 40, and you miss 30 shots in the paint in the same game, you're probably going to lose. And the Hawks did in this game. Defensively, it was ugly overall because of just how bad the second half numbers look. At halftime, they had a 107 defensive rating, which is actually excellent. And then they had a 144 defensive rating in the second half. The Bulls made every shot after halftime. They had, again, 85% true shooting. They ended up in this game 57% from the floor and 44% from three. Some of that, I think Quinn said this too, I'm not sure how he phrased it, but it was basically, tip of the cap to the Bulls for making a bunch of shots in this game. That is definitely the case. Credit to them. Some of that is also bad defense. The Hawks, people always miss this point when I try to explain what some shooting variance means. It does not mean that you played great defense. And the Hawks did not play great defense at all in the second half. But it was magnified by the Bulls making a lot of shots. And they made more threes in a 13-minute span after halftime than the Hawks made in the entire game, which speaks to all kinds of things. They had 27 fast break points, which definitely helped to juice things. For a long time, the Hawks were basically dead even in this game in half-court settings, and the Bulls were just winning the transition game pretty comfortably. I might dig into this a little bit later on this sort of next week probably, but the Hawks have actually improved defensively on the whole this season pretty clearly. The numbers bear that out. Even with the comical three-point shooting that they've allowed this season. And I'm not going to do the whole thing again tonight. If you've listened to the podcast for a while, just probably breathe a sigh of relief on that. The Hawks are dead last in the league in three-point defense so far in attempts and makes and accuracy, etc. They are giving up too many threes. That's still the case in this game. Overhelping, breakdowns. I'm not giving them a pass on that. They are not playing great defense against three-point shooting in this game. But the Bulls shot 44% from three in this game, including 8 of 10 from the trio of Dalen Terry, Ayo Dosunmu, and Jalen Smith. There's some bad variance too. So it's both. It is both, but it happened in this game again, and the Hawks could not overcome that because their own offense wasn't good enough. So at halftime, look, I was preparing my notes as I always do. All right, the Hawks defensively have been playing pretty well. After halftime, it wasn't great. A lot of that, though, continues to be fueled by the Hawks' offensive struggles. When you don't make shots, your opponent gets tempo and comfort, etc., and they get better looks. And that was the case in this game. Big picture, it's not a game to panic on, and I know that it's what it is. Teams lose games and people panic. I continue to be kind of just stunned by the level of outrage from some fans in corners of the internet. Maybe I shouldn't be, but yes, they're 7-10. They have not been great this season. This is not a great loss. It's a coin flip game. You lose it. I get that. The Bulls have kind of owned you now for a year plus. That isn't great either. But the amount of fire Quinn and send Trae to the moon or whatever, I don't quite get that. But listen, it would probably be better for my traffic as a podcast if I had a little bit more of a hot take on some of this stuff. And occasionally I will share that, but that's not really my brand. I tell you what I think happened in a basketball game. And in the first half tonight, the Hawks were sunk by poor shooting, almost exclusively. In the second half, it was much more about the defense. They did score. You can take some solace in that. The offense did kind of find itself. But look, as we'll get into later on, and probably during this podcast in the middle as well, the Hawks need Trae Young to be Trae Young, and he's not right now in some respects. That is a problem for the offense. And as if you listen to the show back in the summer, I was making this point a lot. They don't have a lot of shooting on this roster. It was nice to have Bogey back. He helps with that. But everybody else that's supposed to be tasked with making shots, Ricochet 0 of 2, Trae 1 of 8 from 3, Okongwu 0 of 2, DeAndre Hunter 1 of 4, Bucket 0 of 1. Like, they didn't have enough spacing along the way. That was a question coming into the season. And when Trae is brilliant, it could be overcome. Right now, he's not in brilliant form. I know he had big numbers by the end, counting stat-wise, but he wasn't great in this game as a scorer in particular. So we'll get into all of that later on. But what I would say is there's not a panic point for me. I don't think there's a reason to panic at this point in time. It's not a good performance. It's not a loss that you want. There are NBA Cup ramifications that we'll talk about later on in the podcast as well. But really, the shooting on both ends of the floor in the last two games, I mean, it's kind of crazy how similar the first 6 quarters were between the 4 quarters against Golden State and the first half tonight. Second half was a little bit different, but still, it just kind of morphed further to the one side where the Hawks did shoot better, but the Bulls went absolutely nuclear, and there you have it. So we'll get into all of what sort of happened and unfolded in this game. At the end of the podcast, I will give you my player-by-player evaluations plus an update on the NBA Cup, where the Hawks are, by the way, still very much alive. First, though, a word from our partners on the show. Today's show is brought to you by Chime. We've all realized at some point that it was time to make a serious move with our money. You can take control of your finances by using a Chime checking account with features like no maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. You can learn more at chime.com/NBA. Some of us definitely remember stories about this, but overdrafting our accounts or having other issues, and Chime can actually help you make progress with fee-free overdraft up to $200. You also join millions of people at Chime who are working on financial progress with no monthly or maintenance fees. Plus, they have more than 50,000 fee-free ATMs. And to date, Chime has spotted members over $30 billion. Friends give friends a boost. Eligible members get complimentary boosts to temporarily increase their Friends Spot Me limit as well. And when you give a boost, that can boost you back to temporarily raise your limit. Tell you how all that works at Chime. First, set up a direct deposit in your Chime account. After a qualifying direct deposit of $200 or more, Chime will notify you to enroll in Spot Me. With an activated debit card, Chime will then spot you up to $200 when you exceed your balance, and your next direct deposit is applied to your negative balance. And Chime never charges fees or interest for using Spot Me. Make your fall finances a little greener by working toward your financial goals with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/NBA. That is chime.com/NBA. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank NA or Stride Bank NA, members FDIC. Spot Me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Boosts are available to eligible Chime members as enrolled in Spot Me and are subject to your monthly limits. Terms and conditions apply. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. I go to a lot of the different basketball games. Of course, it never gets old to me. The sounds from the court, the buzz in the crowd. It's always fun, and memories are vivid when it comes to taking in all of the action on the court. Like Gametime, you get tickets for all kinds of sporting events, including hockey, including basketball, including baseball, including football, etc. Plus tickets for music, comedy, and theater as well. They have a feature called Gametime Picks at Gametime. It makes getting tickets easier and better for you. See your favorite teams play live in person. They also filter out all the stuff you actually don't want and show you the incredible deals on great seats. There's no actual wasted time searching through tickets across the board. For example, there are awesome deals right now involving Hawks games at Gametime, including a pair of tickets right now available for $19 each, including fees for the home game on Monday, December 2nd against the Pelicans. That's an awesome deal. Of course, there's more that happening all the time at Gametime. I love the feature that actually takes out all the pricing when it comes to all-in pricing is available right there for you. If you turn that toggle on, no surprise fees at the end of the checkout process at Gametime, plus the lowest possible price guaranteed at Gametime. Take all of the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app right now, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account and use that code. It's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Gametime app today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, and we'll dive into how this one unfolded. And the Hawks are healthy right now. I've seen some mixed reactions to that because, of course, they get healthy and they lose 2 games in a row. What I would say is correlation and causation are not the same thing. The Hawks are not suddenly worse as a team because they have the healthy roster. You want to have the healthy roster. Their top 8 is a pretty darn good, interesting top 8 in some respects, but they have not had their flow together just yet with guys missing time. That's understandable, plus all the shooting variants, etc. But they are healthy now, which is a good thing, not a bad thing. The Bulls actually started 4 guards, played very small in this game for the most part. That worked out in their favor. They had Aodosumu start and play against Trae to defend him. That worked for the most part, and Dosunmu also made a couple of shots in this game, which definitely helped them. He had 20 points, not usually what you expect from him in 38 minutes. The Hawks were actually disjointed at the start, I would say. The ball was moving very well. I think the Hawks' passing was actually quite good, other than some turnovers early on in this game. But they had 32 assists along the way. Clint Capella had a great first quarter at 10 points and three rebounds in 6 minutes. They also had some turnovers, though. Dyson missed a couple of easy ones around the rim. The Bulls lead the league in pace, which I referenced earlier at least once. They were playing fast the entire game and definitely had the Hawks on their heels, to their credit. This happened last year, too. Remember, it's not quite as extreme as this was, but the Pacers games last year were somewhat similar. They were more offensively explosive than the Bulls, but the Hawks did not deal with that very well. So maybe that's a little bit of a carryover on that front. Rotationally, there were no surprises until the fourth quarter. It was a 9-man group. If you missed it yesterday on the show, I recommend listening to the Mailbag podcast I did yesterday. But I talked about how just very normal it is to play 9 guys on a regular basis. It's kind of the standard NBA number. So there's been some consternation about that. I get why, but the Hawks have 9 guys they like. And they really have 12 guys they probably like. And 2 of them got in later on. They did play beat Krejci and Garrison Matthews in the fourth quarter, trying to find a spark. It didn't work, but they at least tried it down the stretch. The Hawks actually did make a run mid-quarter, actually 12-2 to take the lead. That was one of their only leads in the game, actually, mid-quarter in the first quarter. But they did kind of sputter a little bit at the end of the quarter. And despite the fact that it was not really a high-scoring first quarter, the pace was in favor of Chicago. In the second quarter, Okongwu had a rough start as a play finisher. I think he was like 1 of 6 from the floor to begin the game. Not his best effort offensively in this one as a finisher again. Did have a nice pass to Bufkin on a nice cut for a layup. The Hawks actually had a sequence in the first half with 4 consecutive turnovers, one by Ricochet, one by Bufkin, one by Trae, one by Jalen, and that fueled a 9-0 run from the Bulls. As I said later on, they actually stopped turning the ball over almost entirely. But in that first quarter and a half, it was kind of rough with ball security, and it was better after that, which definitely helped to improve the offense. They did come back and tie the game briefly in the middle of the second quarter. Trae got to the rim a few times, which was nice to see. Quinn took a technical foul in the first half. I think it's probably on purpose. The Bulls were grabbing and holding a lot defensively. He made a point to point that out in live action. Got teed up, went pretty nuts in pretty clear, public way. But offensively, it went cold at the end of the first half. 5 points in 4.5 minutes. And more, hear me out, shot-making issues for the Hawks. They were 3 of 14 from 3 in the first half until the last minute when Jalen made one. But they got into the halftime break down 7 despite scoring less than a point per possession in the first half. It's hard to win doing that, but the main issue, again, was the shooting. And they got to the paint a lot, but they just couldn't make shots on the perimeter. Again, in the second half, it did flip toward Chicago. So the Bulls made 3 threes in the first 2.5 minutes, plus a strange goaltending call that was a 3-point play for Chicago that ended up being the Hawks going down by 15 points. And looking back, it was probably over right then. It wasn't in the moment, but the Hawks never really made a run at that point in time. Defensively, it was good first half. Then they allowed 16 points in the first 4 minutes of the second half, and that was kind of where it was. Bogey had the one flurry as a shot maker. He had back-to-back threes to get the margin back to 9, I believe, mid-third quarter. And they had some juice there, but then coming out of that break, out of a timeout that the Bulls took, they had 2 threes. The Congo got blocked at the rim. Dyson turned it over. It was back to 17. It was just every time there was a step forward, there was a step and a half back in this game. Offensively, it was much better. Hunter had a nice stretch in the third quarter. He had 9 points in 7 minutes, but the Bulls shot 75% from the field in the third quarter, including 6 threes, and their pace was a big story in that stretch as well. In the fourth, there wasn't too much to talk about, honestly. I mentioned before that they did try beat Krejci. There is a reason that coaches don't like to try guys cold in the fourth quarter. Veet came in. Obviously, they're trying to find a spark. You're down by 15 points, whatever it was. I don't blame Quinn for trying it at that point in time. But he got blocked on the first possession. He got blocked again on the next possession and looked kind of tentative both times. Then passed him an open 3, then drove to nowhere and just got caught. So I'm not blaming Veet. I like Veet. He had a rough 3-minute stretch, and that was it for him. It didn't matter. The game was already probably over, but it didn't go well. They also tried Garrison for 1 minute. He drew a charge, but that was it for him. And the Hawks were already in trouble, but then Jalen Smith, as I mentioned before, hit 3 threes in a 5-minute span, basically. The Hawks had one more run in them that was kind of a minor run, a 13-4 run to get it to back to 11, I should say, with 3:30 to go in the fourth quarter. From there, that gets you on the board to being alive-ish, but you have to be perfect from there, basically, which is not exactly fair to ask. And then Levine made back-to-back jumpers that were contested. He made them both. Game over, basically. I'll talk about the NBA Cup at the end of the podcast again, a little bit more in depth. But just as a note here, there was a lot to talk about the point differential at the end of the game and how the Hawks could have, finished the game a little bit stronger. They missed a free throw. I think 2 free throws actually at the end of the game. Plus, I believe the Bulls scored last, or at least at the very end of the game. It is what it is. Yeah, the Bulls hit a 3 with like 7 seconds to go to put them up by 14. It was 11. In certain circumstances, that would matter a lot for NBA Cup, which is why everybody was still playing hard at the end of this game. But if the Hawks had won, the differential would have mattered more because it would have given them potentially a insurance cushion in the event of a close loss to Cleveland next week in the last of 4 NBA Cup games. Because the Hawks lost, really the only reasonable way for the Hawks to advance now is to win the group. And by doing so, they have to beat Cleveland in a week from now, which, again, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's a possible outcome. It's at home, etc. And they need Chicago to lose one more time. They do play Boston, which is probably going to be a loss for the Bulls, you would imagine. But the chances of a 3-way tie now are totally dead, and they can't really get a wild card if they go 2-2. So point differential, I'm not saying it doesn't matter at all, but it probably doesn't matter now. It would have mattered again in a win. So I get why there's focus on that. It does matter on the whole in the NBA Cup, but for the Hawks in particular, it's almost as simple as win against the Cavs, have a chance, and if they don't, they're dead. We'll see that later on. Okay, that's all I have on the game flow portion of this game, other than just the numbers itself. Like, again, tale of 2 halves, ugly offense in the first half, better after halftime, and then the defense was the exact opposite, and that led to the hideousness in this game. Okay, more to come in a second on the player-by-player evaluations, and there's plenty to get to from how Trae looked to how Jalen looked, et cetera, et cetera. First, though, a word from our partners on the podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. But now the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn a very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of the high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. That's Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Okay, into the player-by-player breakdowns in this game. 9 guys played real minutes. Garrison and Veet played only a little bit. DMP, CD for Larry Nance and David Roddy. And Keaton Wallace was inactive again as the Hawks are smartly not playing him or having him active to save games on the 2-way with 50 maximum games. As for the guys who did play, Kobe Buffkin, 10 minutes, 2 points, 2 rebounds, an assist, 2 turnovers, -5, 1 of 4 from the floor, 0 of 1 from 3. Offensively, it's definitely a little bit uneven. Defensively, he looks fine to me for the most part. He is not playing super well. He's not like totally murdering them either. Kind of similar story there as we talked about on the podcast yesterday about Kobe. Positively, Bogdan Bogdanovic looked good in this game. 16 points on 11 shots for Bogey. He was 2 of 3 from 2, 4 of 8 from 3, had 4 assists, 1 turnover, 1 steal. Is he good defensively? No, he is not. And that was evident at times in this game. But Bogey looking like Bogey is a huge development. Obviously, the Hawks shooting this year has been suboptimal. I believe how they have lost, for the record, they've lost the 3-point battle as far as makes in the game. 15 of 17 games this season. Yikes. But having Bogey back will help. On that front, will help their offense. I've said this a lot, but people, I think, have lost their minds in the last few days about Bogey. I won't go down the rabbit hole too much here, but like people talking about how Garrison's better than Bogey and Bogey's killing. Everybody take a deep breath. Bogey was the best bench player in the NBA last season by the numbers. That's not just my opinion. That was very clear in the numbers. The Hawks were like 10 points per possession, 10 points per 100 possessions better with Bogey on the court last year as well. So it wasn't just individual stuff. He's very valuable to them. It has always been the case for 4 years now that the Hawks are at their best when Bogey's good, and he looked good in this game. The Hawks were, by the way, dead even in his minutes. And again, they lost by 14 points. So positive stuff there from Bogey if you're looking for some stuff to hold on to moving forward. Hunter had a up and down game, 14 points on 12 shots, 2 rebounds, and a steal. I think defensively, he was a little bit step slow in the second half. It's a couple of times in a row in the third, fourth quarters where he was getting blown by guards. But Hunter, as we've said numerous times dating back for the summer, Hunter is just better against guys who are not quick. He's better against bigger forwards than he is against guards at this point in time. That was evident in this game, and the Bulls don't have any guys like that. They only have guards. So that was a part of the why that happened. But offensively, he helped them a lot in the third quarter in particular. Okongwu, I mentioned before, had a really rough finishing game. 3 of 9 from the floor for Okongwu, including 0 of 2 from 3. Missed a free throw as well. 7 points, 6 rebounds. A couple nice flashes. He had one great verticality play defensively where he walled off against Maz Buzelis in the first half. But it was not a great night for Okongwu. I think he'll have better nights, to be sure, but he was not very good in this one, as most guys weren't, honestly. Ricochet, kind of curious. 4 points in 16 minutes. He never came back in. And I posited yesterday on the show, if you missed it, I think Ricochet is on a minutes limit of some kind, and the Hawks are just not saying that. Either that or they just don't trust him at all. We'll see. He is a rookie. Rookies are generally not the best, but he is a better than average rookie as far as the floor game stuff, processing wise, defensively, etc. But they're not going back to him very often. He's still starting. We'll see if that changes in the near future with Hunter getting healthier and healthier. But I thought he played okay. 0-2 from 3, but other than that, I thought he did his job for the most part. So a little bit of a curious thing that he never came back in the game. I don't mean to be picking on him, but because I think I've praised him enough where people know where I stand. Dyson was not good in this game. This was by far his worst game as a Hawk, not even particularly close, I don't think. He did, of course, have 4 steals because he's an absolute wrecking ball defensively. That was the case. But even defensively, I won't say he was bad because he wasn't, but he made more mistakes in this game than I remember him having in any game so far this year. Just noting that. 8 points, 5 rebounds. He was 1 of 10 on 2-point attempts in this game. Obviously, that's going to not be sustainable, but I think he missed at least 3 or 4 really, really, really makeable shots at the rim, plus a bunch of floaters. He'll have better nights. Ironically, he was 2 of 4 from 3, which is funny in this game. He didn't kill them. It's just that he had a rough one for him. I think he's been great so far, and I'm excited about the Dyson Daniels era, I would say, in Atlanta, but not his night at all. Clint Capella was actually quite good, I thought, and that's in the numbers as well. 21 points for Clint. I believe that's a season high for Capella. I'm looking this up now to make sure I'm not crazy, but I believe that is a season high. It is. Season high 21 points for Capella. He also had 11 rebounds, 3 assists, 0 turnovers, had a block shot, 10 of 14 from the floor, did miss some free throws, but that was basically it for him. He played really well. He's not been the problem this year at all. I think Clint's doing a good job. He was good in this game. Not much to add. Weird night for Jalen Johnson. So Jalen had the best scoring night of anyone in the Hawks with 25 points, actually tied with Trae, and was good offensively for the most part. 25 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists. He was 8 of 14 on 2s, 2 of 5 from 3, 1 turnover. Generally was good offensively. A couple of these settled jump shots that you don't love to see, but he was their best player on offense for large portions of the night. I thought he was really bad defensively, pretty visibly bad. And I've been disappointed this year with Jalen's defense. I've noted that a few times. I think he's been below where he needs to be long-term for the Hawks. I'm not saying he can't get there by any means, but I think just the little stuff today was lacking, both on the first watch and on the rewatch. Just some baffling plays from him defensively. So he'll have better nights overall. He was, of course, productive on offense. I'm not saying otherwise. He was obviously good there, and they needed that. But defensively, I just want to see more from him. I think the Hawks probably agree based on the film that I saw. And then lastly, you got Trae Young. So Trae, 25 points to tie with Jalen for the team lead, 13 assists. Did have 4 steals as well defensively. Was pretty active there. Got to the line 8 times, made all 8. He was 7 of 10 on 2s. That's a good number. 1 of 8 from 3 is not a good number, of course. But a lot of the production Trae had in this game was juiced by the fourth quarter. So that's notable. I don't think that Trae was a productive scorer on the level that it looks like he was in the box score of this game. Notably, after the game, Quinn got a question about whether the Achilles is hampering Trae. He gave a lengthy answer that I thought was actually pretty interesting, where he talked about how Trae is doing a lot of things well, how he'll shoot better, et cetera, et cetera. But at the beginning, he kind of hemmed and hawed about the actual question and then said, and I quote, "Trae is a guy who plays through everything," end quote. It seemed to me that he wanted to say more and did not. That is not exactly a denial that Trae is not healthy. I took it that way after watching the clip. He did go. It was a much longer answer, which is why I'm not playing it for you here. It's a very long answer, but it was notable to me that Quinn kind of did his hesitation. Do I answer this or not? He kind of answered it, but saying it, that Trae plays for everything. So I think he's not healthy. Beyond that, I talked about that a lot yesterday on the show. He's not as fast as he usually is. He's not as physical as he usually is going to the rim. There were times where he turned the corner and it was good. That's helpful. 13 assists is obviously, you can't fake that. His passing remains elite. But I said it earlier in the podcast, the first 5 minutes or so, the Hawks have to have Trae playing at a Trae Young level as a scoring threat. And that has not been the case this season, really, overall, as a scorer anyway, and especially in the last week and a half, 2 weeks. We'll see if that continues. Again, he scored enough points in this game by the end, but like it was kind of some not like consequential points. And yeah, 7 of 10 from 2, but his 2-point shooting this year on the whole has been pretty poor. The floater has been kind of just lost in the wilderness right now. He'll find it, I'm sure, but I have not changed my mind at all about him not being healthy. I still believe that based on what I've seen with my eyes. I'm not reporting that. I talked about it a lot yesterday on the show, but the combination of that and like not being able to be like assertive enough, it's not like on him. The Hawks didn't score a lot of points in this game. Other than 3-point shooting was not very good, but they just kind of have to have him do a lot. It's kind of a weird situation. Like, yeah, it'd be great to have him take 2 weeks off. They just can't do that with the way this team is built. So we'll leave it there for now. Okay. That's all on the game front. One more thing on the NBA Cup, because as wild as this game was, and it was an ugly loss in some respects, the Hawks still have a clear path to win the NBA Cup group, and by proxy, still be alive for the trip to Vegas, etc. They will win the group if they beat Cleveland a week from today at home, unless the Bulls beat the Wizards and the Celtics. So the Hawks could beat Cleveland and not win the group if the Bulls beat the Celtics and the Wizards. But that is not likely to happen, I don't think. We'll cover it more in detail next week. But that is a small bright spot. The Hawks are still alive. And yes, they'll be underdogs against Cleveland. I'm not saying otherwise, but that's a winnable game. You're at home. It's not like you can't win it. So you have a chance. And this is a game that would have been nice to get through that prism for the Hawks, but they're still alive if you care about that and that pursuit. Last thing, the Hawks now have the weekend off. They come home after the long 4-game trip. And again, that's always under-discussed. I was actually happy to hear Dominique talk about it actually on the broadcast today instead of Brian Oliver. Like as former players, I've always said this because it's been relayed to me by staffers, by players, by coaches around the NBA. Road trips are brutal, especially long ones. And then having to have an NBA Cup game on the way home from a West Coast trip after you've been gone for a week plus is pretty tough scheduling. And usually the last game of the road trip is always like a tough one anyway. So that doesn't mean that it does not excuse their play today. I'm not saying that's the reason why they lost. It's not. But that's a tough spot. And that's why they give them 2 days off, generally speaking, when you get home from a long trip. So they have Saturday and Sunday off. Then they play the Mavericks at home on Monday. Luka's not going to play in that game by all accounts, so that's a pretty good spot for the Hawks, but nothing's assured there at all. It's a 1-game sample size. Dallas has plenty of talent, for instance. They still have Kyrie. They have really good surrounding talent. They're actually, as I'm recording this podcast, winning in Denver at the moment without Luka, so they might lose that game, but they could win it. So anyway, that's a good reminder of what that game is going to be. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a podcast between now and the game or not. I think I probably will do one Sunday night, but we'll see. So stay tuned. It's a holiday week for everybody, etc., including me, but I will have a podcast at the very latest after the game on Monday that I will be in attendance for Hawks Mavs on Monday. Please subscribe to this podcast. If you're a new listener, welcome aboard. Hopefully it would be more of an upbeat tone moving forward, but check out the podcast, subscribe on Apple, on Spotify, Overcast, and we're also on YouTube. If you want to support the podcast, please like the episodes on YouTube and also subscribe on audio platforms as well. That double dipping really helps us. 5-star ratings and reviews, also helpful. And please follow us on social media. The show is on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. I am there at BT Rowland. I'm also on Blue Sky at BT Rowland. And please follow my non-podcast work about the Hawks and occasionally some Brave stuff too at patreon.com/BT Rowland. Obviously, not a fun night for the Hawks. Some frustrations boiling over on social media and stuff that I've seen. Everyone take a deep breath, I would say, at some point in time, still early in the season, but there'll be more to come. I'm not going to go anywhere. We'll be covering the team all the way through, including during the holiday week, etc. And we'll see you all next time.